Right, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Will Robertson, and I'm the Associate Director of Parent Engagement here at Elon. And we really appreciate everybody being here this afternoon for our webinar. We've got a great team from the Koenigsberger Learning Center here at Elon, and they'll kind of go through exactly what each of their roles are and their different departments within the KLC. But again, we appreciate everybody being here. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording has begun, and we will post this on our Elon Parents YouTube page as well as our Facebook page when we're done. So if you need to go back and watch it again, or if you want to share it with other folks, it will be available at those spots. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to James, and he's going to get us started.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, we're really happy to be here. We're going to do some introductions and we'll cover, we'll start talking about what we're going to cover today. Before we do, just so you know, if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat. If there's an optimal moment while we're talking through things to stop and answer that question, we will. And if there's not a great moment in real time, we will get to those at the end. There'll be time at the end for you to ask questions. So feel free to put questions in the chat. There will also be an opportunity at the end to either type in questions so we can answer those as well. We can start with introductions. So my name is James Holsinger. I'm Executive Director of the Koenigsberger Learning Center, the KLC, and I also serve as Director of Learning Assistance.
Good afternoon. I'm Monica Isbell, and I'm the Director of Disability Resources.
Hello, I'm Brandy Probst. I'm the Director of Elon 1010, which is our first year advising seminar.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Ziga and Director of Academic Advising.
Okay, so we've got all the directors within the KLC. What we're going to do today, we're going to first talk about some KLC resources to make sure that everybody knows what resources are available to your students, and there are quite a few of those. We'll also offer some tips and strategies for how we think parents can best support their students. And then, as I mentioned before, there will be time at the end for questions and comments.
So again, Kathy Ziga. So I am here representing our academic advising team. And as you can view on the screen, or if you're able to view on the screen, we support a lot of different kinds of students. Some of our biggest initiatives are the first year advising and registration, which is for our incoming students, brand new to Elon, whether they are fall start or they are spring start. But we also support a lot of students from smaller populations that impact our Elon community, transfer students, and we do have a dedicated assistant director of academic advising and transfer coordinator who works with that as a larger population on campus. We have folks in our office who specifically work with our readmitted students who've taken a little bit of time away. We are also continuing to improve our support of our international students who have some different questions based on previous experiences that they had at different high schools and possibly different institutions at the higher education level. And there's a lot of students in that undecided or re-exploring phase of life when they get to Elon, and we support them either through consultation meetings or through a formalized course. Some students actually really like the nudge of the full course because it gives them some structure to explore, whereas others like to explore through their different academic opportunities and then have a conversation later. So those are the main populations we support. And then, of course, your students might be starting to get a little anxious to know what they might take in the fall semester. That is coming soon after spring break. But we also support our students who are planning their upcoming term. We support students through a major declaration as we run that process and update to make sure that their majors and minors reflect what they are pursuing. And this year, we actually are doing a small pilot for student advising mentors for a couple of our different majors at Elon, trying to impact students from a peer-to-peer support perspective after the big initiative and program that Brandy's going to talk about in just a moment as well. So just continuing some support after perhaps their initial semester, initial year. And then we're here for our faculty advisors who your students do end up working with as soon as they declare that major. So we help and consult with faculty as they support your students. And I'm seeing there's a question right on this one, James, if you don't mind. I'm going to answer that one to that anonymous sender on our chat. And so some of the questions we might answer, we might direct them to you, an individual, or we might answer them live, just depending on the question.
Alrighty, so I'm going to talk about Elon 1010, which is our first year advising seminar. And so every first year student that enters the university will take Elon 1010 their first semester at the institution. And so Elon 1010 is a 1 credit hour pass-fail course. It's 55 minutes a week for a full semester. The Elon 1010 course is taught by a faculty or staff member at the university, a full-time faculty or staff member at the university, and that person will serve or serves as the academic advisor to the students enrolled in their 1010 class until the students declare. And so students can declare their major at the end of Elon 1010 for the first time. If the students are not ready to declare their major, then they will stay with their Elon 1010 instructor. If they are ready to declare their major, then they will move on to a faculty advisor within their major department. Also, as a part of that course, there's a peer educator who serves as a form of peer support to the students in the class, as well as a liaison to the faculty or staff member who teaches the course. And so the purpose of the peer educator is to, again, have peer support for students, but also they have a student who attends Elon to show them the ropes, and someone that they can talk to at the peer level about their transition to Elon and their transition from high school to college. Also, as a part of Elon 1010, students are assigned a personal librarian as a part of the Elon 1010 course. And so our personal librarian are all first-year librarians, first-year experienced librarians who work in Belk Library, and they are assigned to each 1010 course, and they will assist students with any research or information literacy that they need assistance with. So written assignments, projects, anything that they need help with in terms of doing research, or finding sources to make sure that they are doing that in the appropriate way, in the appropriate manner. And that personal librarian will follow them throughout their entire time at Elon. Again, and that is connected and integrated through the Elon 1010 course. Some of the topics that are covered through Elon 1010, of course, academic advising is the crux of the course. And so we talk about academic advising and planning, first year transition topics and their first year experience. What is that like for them? What are they experiencing? How can we help them through that transition? We talk about the honor code. We teach them the Elon core curriculum. So what your students learn over the summer through first year advising and registration, we expand upon that so that they can learn all of the curriculum, beginning with our liberal arts education, as well as their major and minor requirements for the major and minor that they may be interested in. And then, of course, they go through course registration with their academic advisor, who is their instructor, at that first time within the fall semester. And then the major declaration process. Again, if they are ready to declare their major, they will do that at the end of Elon 1010. But the major project and the culminating experience that every Elon 1010 student experiences is creating a graduation plan, or what we like to refer to as their Elon plan. And so students will create a graduation plan, and it can be a 4-year plan, or if your student has brought in credit, maybe as an early college student, then they can create a 2-year or a 3-year plan as well. And so that graduation plan is comprehensive, it's holistic. So it not only includes courses or requirements for their major or for the core, but it also includes experiences. So do they want to study abroad? If so, when and how can we add that into the plan? Do they want to do research? Do they want to do leadership? Do they want to be involved in certain student organizations? And then building that into the plan, as well as what resources or departments or offices are there for them to help them fulfill their plan and achieve their plan by the time they are ready to graduate. And so those are some general things about the Elon 1010 course. I do see there's a question. I'll see if it's specific to 1010 or not. So yeah, it is specific to 1010. There's a question about my rising sophomores interested in becoming an Elon 1010 peer educator in the fall. When and how would they apply for that role? They would actually want to apply now. We are recruiting for fall PEs for fall 2024. And so I would encourage you to have them email our office, and you can email at elon101@elon.edu. So they can email our office at elon101 at elon.edu. Let us know they're interested, and then our staff, our Elon 1010 staff, our graduate intern will reach out to the student, send them the appropriate application, and get them going through the process. And so I will turn it over to Monica to talk about Disabilities Resources.
Thank you, Brandy. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Disability Resources as you are looking to help your young adult son or daughter prepare to be here with us at Elon University. So the first thing I want to talk about is the differences between high school and college services. Right now, with students who are still in high school, those rights belong to the parent. So the parent is the one that's attending those IEP meetings, 504 meetings. They're the ones getting the invitations to come to those meetings. They're the ones being talked to about their son or daughter's services and supports. Once a student graduates high school, those rights become the student. And so our work and emphasis begins to work with the student and have those conversations, email and communicate directly with the student. And I know at times that for parents who have had to advocate and be in that driver's seat to help get services for the student, that's oftentimes hard to step back and let my son or daughter navigate. But I would encourage you to support your son and daughter in that navigation process. Let them be the one to outreach to this office and contact and find out what the process is and what they need to do as far as documentation. One question I'm often asked is, so if they had services or accommodations in high school, they just carry over to college? No, they do not carry over. So it doesn't matter if a student had an IEP or 504, those services do not carry over. We are under the law of ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, not under IDEA as it is in K-12 education. So it may be, they may be eligible for some of those same accommodations or similar accommodations they had in high school. But as far as it actually just carrying it over like a continuation, it does not. So the students have to initiate that registration process. And out on our website, we have outlined in 6 steps what that process is. The first step of that process, once they become an Elon student and have an Elon email and also their ID, they will go out and create an account in our Accommodate system. That will allow them to be able to complete the intake form, but also upload their documentation. And documentation can vary based off of the nature of the disability. My rule of thumb for students has always been submit what you've got, let us look at it, and we'll give you feedback on if that's sufficient or if we need something in addition. The other piece of this process too, not only do we work with academic accommodations, but we also work with housing and ESA accommodations. Now, both of those have deadlines. The housing accommodation request process, that deadline to submit to look at housing accommodations is May 1st. The ESA process, that accommodation deadline is in early August. So students still have to go through and create their Accommodate account. Even if they're not looking at academic accommodations, they still have to create an Accommodate account in order to pursue housing and ESA accommodations. The other thing I would speak of too with DR is other supports within our office. We have a peer mentoring program that is specifically for students who are registered with this office. We have peer mentors that are sophomores and up that work with the student in terms of transition and adjustment, organizational skills, time management, making those connections here at Elon. And so information will come out about what students, we get the semester started, about students if they're interested in peer mentoring and receiving a peer mentor, what they need to do and how they access information. The other piece I will talk to you about is how early should we submit a request? Now, do not wait until August. August is too late. We already have students who are submitting accommodation requests for the upcoming fall semester now. And so what we are doing as we're receiving new requests for students incoming for the fall of 2024, we are acknowledging that we received the request by communicating back to the student to let the student know if everything's there and they're good to go for us to review, or if we need additional documentation. And so as we are reviewing a completed request, we will start in March outreaching to students to schedule those interactive intake meetings with us via Zoom primarily, or they can be in person. But those allow the student an opportunity to share his or her perspective, us engage in the process and discuss what they're requesting and get a better understanding of the impact imposed by the disability and what accommodations are needed, but also an opportunity to maybe connect students with other resources on campus that they may not be aware of or to make them aware of. And so we will continue to review documentation for new requests for the upcoming fall semester, all through this semester, all through the summer. So it's not there's no deadline or due date, but we encourage students to start that process early and do not wait until August. We allot typically between 10 to 15 business days, but that can take longer depending on the time of the year that we're in.
Monica, there's a couple of questions to add to what you just provided as really strong information. I think one connects to what you said early. So there was a question about their student struggles with executive functioning and keeping track of their assignments, deadlines, and so on. The student has worked with the Learning Center throughout high school. Will there be someone to help them when they get to Elon? So I know you addressed that a little bit, but what other advice would you add to that?
So
question?
I would encourage the student to also look at our learning assistance program and getting connected with an LST. And I know that Dr. Holsinger will talk more about those services. There is not someone specifically within our office that does that kind of coaching type work with students, but we would pair that student up, potentially looking at the peer mentoring program through DR and possibly our resources through learning assistance.
Fantastic. And there's another question, more of a concern about noticing that perhaps some of the accessibility parking in certain areas of campus is not as good as would like to be. Just any comments or questions about how your team tries to assist anybody who is making those requests from that student perspective?
So if we have students who are in need of accessible parking related to maybe a temporary situation or something that's non-temporary, they go through the same accommodation request process through our office. They will submit documentation to help us understand the need. Oftentimes we might have to meet with the student, but sometimes if it's just a parking situation, we do not necessarily meet, but we work in conjunction with and outreach to campus security and police regarding parking, because they're the ones who oversee parking. And so we will have conversation with them, or oftentimes direct the student to their office in regards to concerns related to accessible parking.
You're great. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to pick things up next and talk a little bit about learning assistance. And I think I'll answer the question, as Kathy mentioned, or help to answer the question that was asked as well. So learning assistance, my office, we are in charge of providing academic support that's non-writing related for students at Elon. So we provide tutoring for many of the courses that students take in their primarily in their first and second year here at Elon. We are a College Reading and Learning Association CRLA certified tutoring program, which means we have a rigorous training program and a screening program to determine who should be a tutor. All of the tutors in our office are peers. There is no additional cost to your student to use that service, and your student can work up to or can work with a tutor up to twice per week per subject. So for instance, if your student is in 3 courses that we offer tutoring for, they could have 6 sessions per week across those 3 courses. We don't see that often. It's not often that a student takes advantage of us that much, but it's available to them. We also offer tutoring in different contexts. So we have by appointment tutoring for many courses. And then for some of our courses that are a little more in demand, like statistics, computer science, economics, accounting, we also offer drop-in appointment or drop-in tutoring. So there's no appointment necessary. They don't need to let anyone know they're coming. We post that schedule on our website, and they can come by and see someone. They can and should do both. So it's not as if your student has to choose between drop-in or by appointment tutoring, because for all of those courses that we offer drop-in tutoring for, we also have by appointment tutoring. Additional resources, we have what we call, as Monica mentioned, learning strategies tutors. You may hear them referred to as LSTs. These are the tutors that can help your students with executive functioning. So they help students with time management, how to locate study strategies that are not working as well for them, and how to replace them with study strategies that will work better. Learning strategies tutoring works very well when students commit to it as a regular part of their semester. So it's not particularly effective if a student decides to come see an LST once. It does become effective if they come once a week and they have a regular check-in with someone who can ask them, what goals did we set in our last meeting? What goals do we need to set for our next meeting? But there's a whole host of other things they can help students with: how to take better notes in class. Maybe a student has never used a calendar before or a planner, and they want to start doing that. We have 9 LSTs who are ready and are available to work with your student. You could book an appointment tomorrow and have an appointment with an LST. A few other resources I wanted to mention: we offer accountability groups that we set up at the beginning of the semester. Those are closed now, but we'll open those back up again in the fall. Those have become very popular. Students basically just commit to coming once a week to a meeting that's going to be led by an accountability group leader, where they're going to sit together and do work. And there's, of course, like a social aspect of that, like we're all in this together aspect, but there's also just setting aside time in the week to get things done, to make sure that they're not falling behind. And we've had many students who started taking advantage of this in the last year who have continued, and every semester now are saying, I'd like to be a part of an accountability group. We have what we call student success consultations. These are meetings with either myself or Norma Rodriguez, who works in my office. Your student can go to our website, they can click Student Success Consultation and see when we have an available appointment and book something with us. We'll sit down and talk with them about, what's going on in your classes, what's working well, what's not working well, and then we'll make sure that we get them in contact with any support services that we think are necessary. And sometimes we'll have follow-up appointments. Sometimes those student success consultations will be every 3 or 4 weeks to make sure things are still going well and that the student still feels comfortable. So we have a lot of options in learning assistance. I would encourage you to go to our website, where you can read a little bit more about each of these options so that you have a better understanding of what your student can use. We're going to talk here shortly about the importance of them deciding to use these resources. But again, there's no fee for any of this, and we're here and it's ready to go.
So we are definitely a big part of the student support systems that are on campus, but we are not everyone by any stretch. And so we just wanted to cover a few areas that provide some additional support or informational both for your students. So the e-warnings are the Elon University version of a progress report. So these are submitted by the faculty, and both the student and the academic advisor will receive whatever it is that the faculty member has submitted. By and large, these really are progress warnings. There's not kudos in there. Those usually come in more email or perhaps verbal, or just the grade outcome. But these are to alert the student that there is something amiss in the class. What is very important for a lot of these resources is that you convey to your student and encourage them is to make sure that they are handling their professional communication, which is email, because this is how they get it. So a lot of times when we get these as advisors, we are seeing the faculty wants to work with the student. They're giving a lifeline here. And if the student doesn't see that lifeline, then they're missing out on an opportunity. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes the student might need some additional coaching or additional help in some area. But a lot of times it's come see me. And so again, we encourage the students to make sure they're checking their email so they can receive this information. From the advisor side, we ask that they check in with the students. Sometimes that's also via email. So again, the more that they can check their email, which I know sometimes feels like a full-time job in itself, to keep track of all that communication, it is critical. It also includes a lot of these support areas that my colleagues have already mentioned, and some others that are going to be that are listed at the bottom here. So the students get some additional support in terms of where they can turn besides just knowing how they're performing in a class. And I'm tagging one of my colleagues to talk about one of those next areas.
Yeah, so we'll talk just briefly about Share You Care report. So these are reports that are routed through the Office of Student Care and Outreach. they can be submitted by basically anyone on campus. So a student can submit a care report for another student to basically say, like, I've noticed the student seems off, or I'm concerned about the student. That will then go to student care and outreach, and they will likely reach out to the student to check in, make sure things are okay. Sometimes faculty submit these reports, staff submit these reports. These are typically not necessarily academic related. So whereas an e-warning is specific to academics, like a student is performing poorly in a class or they're not attending, a care report is usually more along the lines of a worry about a student's mental health or an understanding of something that's happened in their life and a worry about them, and they want someone to reach out. And so that Share You Care report is really important, starts a process where somebody gets in touch with that student to check in with them and make sure things are okay, and perhaps get them set up with some additional support if they might need it. The third thing listed here, midterm assessment. So midterm assessments, we do things a little differently, I think, at Elon than many places. They will go out just past the midway point in March. We either give students an S, which means satisfactory, or an AR, which means at risk for failure. So when your student gets their midterms, if you would like to talk with them about that, just understand that those are the two potential grades that they could get. It's worth noting, I think, that satisfactory doesn't necessarily mean that they have an A in the class. It just means that the instructor isn't particularly concerned that they're going to, fail the class at that point. And an at risk doesn't necessarily mean that they have an F in the class, but there is some concern on the instructor's part. Both grades, I think, in S or in AR, you should talk with your student about, what does that mean? And should you then go in and talk with the instructor to get a better sense of a full description for you? So if you have an AR, without a doubt, your student should be going to office hours and talking with the instructor to determine why they're at risk for failure. But even if they have an S, I think it's a good opportunity to encourage your student to say, like, maybe go get a sense for, does that S mean you have an A in the course, or does it mean you have a C? Because that's really different in the way you approach the second half of the semester. So those are two additional pieces, and I'm going to turn things over now for the advising registration approval.
There was a question in the chat, Jane, but I don't know if you want to answer that
Oh,
now.
sure.
Are parents notified if there is an e-warning or a shared care report?
That's a great question. Yeah. So parents are not automatically notified if there is an e-warning, and a Share You Care report, parents might be notified. So they might be notified if there's a particular concern, and if there's a FERPA release for that student. So just for everyone to keep in mind, if your student has a FERPA release on file where they list you as someone that they agree to release information to, it's then much more likely if there's a concern that you would be notified. If there's not a FERPA release, they likely would not be notifying you because the student has indicated that they don't want that information shared with someone. And as Monica mentioned at the beginning, this is one of those differences between high school and college where they're adults and now they do own their own academic record.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk about advising and registration approval and faculty office hours. And so for advising and registration approval, like I mentioned earlier, students, when they take Elon 1010, their first semester at the institution, then their advisor is their Elon 1010 instructor. If they do not declare their major, they will stay with their Elon 1010 advisor. So it's possible if your student has not declared, then their advisor, their current advisor is their Elon 1010 instructor still. If they have declared, then their advisor is their major or faculty advisor for their major within their department. And so this is important because the advising and registration, in order for students to be able to register for courses during the advising and registration period, they must be approved by their advisor, whether it is their Elon 1010 advisor or whether it is their major or faculty advisor and faculty advisor. So this is important because students need to, as they're planning for their courses, they should plan their courses in the registration system, and then they should request an appointment, make an appointment with their advisor, whether it's their Elon 1010 advisor or their faculty advisor, to discuss what courses they're planning to take with their advisor so that their advisor can approve them to register. And I say that is important because in order for students to register, the advisor must physically go into the registration system and click a button to say that this student is approved. So if the student does not meet with the advisor or have a conversation with them, then the advisor will not go in there and click that button. And so that is a very important conversation that students need to be having with their advisor. And so the advising and registration period will be coming up in March and April. And so students need to they can reach out to their advisor, or a lot of times advisors will send information to the students, to their advisees, to say, here's how you can make an appointment with me. Either way, going back to what Kathy was saying, students need to be referring to their email. We communicate via email, and advisors will communicate with students via email, but students can also reach out to their advisor as well. So that is an important piece about the advising and registration approval. Another component, another support system that students have are faculty office hours. And so sometimes you will hear from students and they will say, you know, this is what's going on in my class. Maybe there's some content that they're not understanding, or maybe they're just trying to figure out, they have a question for their faculty member, but they didn't have time to ask the faculty member during class time. And that is completely fine. Every faculty member at the institution is required to have faculty office hours. Typically, those office hours are listed on a course syllabus. However, if the student does not see them on the course syllabus, or a lot of times students will misplace their course syllabus, then they can log into their on-track system. They can log in with their credentials, because it is protected. And so they can log into the on-track system and they can view faculty office hours. They can search by faculty and then see what their office hours are, as well as where the faculty office is located. So the time and days of the week that faculty member is available for drop-in. It does not have to be an appointment. You can merely drop in, ask the questions that you need, as long as the faculty member is not meeting with another student at that point. And so that is an opportunity for students to to be able to reach out and engage with faculty. And it doesn't have to be that they don't understand the content. Maybe they want to ask some additional questions, or maybe they're really intrigued about what they learned in class. But that is an additional support that a lot of times students are hesitant to utilize, because sometimes faculty students think, oh, they're faculty, I can't talk to them, but they can. So we offer that opportunity for students to have access to faculty. And they typically have office hours for at least 1 or 2 days a week. So the times will vary. So students can kind of work around their schedule to see when they can stop by or drop into a faculty office hours.
And there are, of course, additional campus resources outside of the KLC. And so we would encourage you to look at the websites for these offices as well. We won't spend a ton of time going through them, but we have a writing center, which is located in Belk Library. Belk Library is here. We have like lots of librarians that are here and ready to help your students. Student care and outreach, we already talked a little bit about before. We have an office for counseling services. There's a student health service center. And then of course, campus recreation and wellness. There's lots of opportunities for your student there. So as we think holistically about all of the different supports that are available and that we want your students to be using, it goes beyond the KLC. And so we wanted to make sure that that was clear as well. Okay, so wanted to talk briefly about some differences for your students now that they're at Elon or as they're getting ready to transition to Elon. One of those is mode of instruction, and it's probably worth thinking and perhaps talking with your student about, like, how are the courses set up that you're in? The answer is likely going to be different across the different courses they take, even in a given semester. So for instance, they might have a classroom that's more of a flipped classroom where they're asked to do a fair amount of work outside of class and come back in ready to kind of teach that back when they come into the classroom. And they're going to have classes where it's more traditional lecture based. And they're going to make that change within even a given day. So on a Monday, they might have one class that's more of like a flipped classroom and one that's more traditional lecture. They're going to want to approach that differently. But one of the challenges as students come to college is they have to, in real time, figure out, what does that mean for me in the way that I prepare for that class? So thinking through modes of instruction, being prepared to talk with your student about, like, not just how is class going, but like, tell me what that class is like. What do you do in that class? Is it very group work heavy, or is it more that you're sitting back and just listening and taking notes? So that's one area. Second, as we mentioned, support structures. We just went through a ton of support structures, but one of the big differences is none of this is, or most of this is not mandatory. So whereas in high school, someone may have said, you have to go see a tutor for this, it's not likely that that's going to be the case when they get to Elon. We want them to come use our resources, but a big part of them becoming an adult and becoming a self-advocate is determining when they need help and reaching out to that help. Brandy went through in detail Elon 1010. One of the huge important pieces of Elon 1010 is introducing all of these resources to students. So they do know about them. The question becomes, do they remember that they learned about them? And are they willing to go and actually see someone? So that's an important piece. The third piece here, academic rigor and faculty expectations. There's just, there's more academic rigor at the college level. Faculty expectations are different. They may and likely are expected to engage quite a bit more in college than they may have been in high school. So it's not enough to simply do the readings or show up on the day of a test, but a big component, particularly at Elon, where we value experiences, coming ready to participate and joining discussions and being an active member of the classroom. And so that transition can take a little time, and usually students pick that up pretty quickly. But there's sometimes a gap there between knowing that that's what they need to do and feeling comfortable doing that in the classroom. And then, of course, there's social differences as well. So they may have gone to a high school where they knew basically everyone, and now they're in college and they need to find their friend group. This is really important. It's not as simple as saying like just focus on the academics, because we know that students that find a friend group and have a good support system are more likely to do well academically. So it's another piece of that holistic view of a student and what they can and should be doing. But the social part's important too. So as you think about talking with your student, making sure that you remember it's not just questions about academics, but like, what's life like at Elon? What are you doing on the weekends? What's been fun for you? And getting a sense for, do they feel like they have a group of people or people to count on and lean on if things don't go as well as they would like?
So I'm going to talk about how you as a parent can help your young adult son or daughter. Number one, encourage and celebrate independence. As I spoke earlier, now the rights that you had when they were, still in, public ed or, K-8, K-12 education, now are the rights of the student. So encourage them, and encourage and support their independency. I know at times they're not going to always get it right. They're going to fall, they're going to get back up and try it again. But you want to work to make your young adult student the most self-sufficient, independent individual. And so support that independency and encourage that independency. Be a coach, not a proxy. Talk to your young adult student about questions to ask, things they need to find out. Don't necessarily run and do it for them. Have them to do it for themselves. Support them being curious about exploring majors and courses and clubs. They may come in with one mindset of maybe this is what I want to do, but there may be some opportunities to explore other opportunities here, encouraging them to take advantage of those opportunities to explore. If you're visiting the campus and visiting your young adult students, schedule it around times of the academic calendar. And then also the last thing will be helping the student to get connected to campus resources. So for example, the student's struggling in a math class. Well, have you gotten in contact with learning assistants? Do you know where they're at on campus? Have you made that outreach? Or if they're working with the DR office, have you submitted your semester request to get your official accommodation letter for the next semester? So encouraging your young adult son or daughter to use our campus resources and how they can connect to those resources.
And so to follow up on this idea of asking questions, we want to talk about how to reframe questions or think about reframing questions. And so in full transparency, I am a parent of a college student. My student is a first-year student. I understand all the things. And so we want to talk to you about when you're asking them questions, make sure you're asking them open-ended questions, and make sure you're thinking about not only the questions, but also your response. And so I'll provide you a really good example. I was telling my colleagues one day, this is when my son came home for fall break last semester. Again, he's an only child. And so my partner had asked him a question. He said, "How are you doing in your classes?" And I saw the look on my son's face. He was about to say, "Fine." He was about to give a one-word answer, and that was it. And I immediately jumped in and I said, "No, what are you learning in your classes? Tell us about your classes." And my partner was just, doing his thing, just asking a question, trying to get a conversation started. but I immediately knew that he was going to give us one word and we were just going to keep on going. And that was going to be it, because he was going to continue to get back on his phone and do his thing. And so reframing that question is really important so that you can get better information. And so asking my son, what are you learning in your classes? Tell us about your classes. We learned a lot of information. He told us about a class that he didn't like. He told us that he was going to change his major from business to sports management because he didn't really enjoy the econ class like he thought he would. And so we had a larger conversation about that. But if we would have just said, how are you doing? We wouldn't have, we would have got a simple word and that was it. And so really think about how to reframe those questions so you can get answers, and really good answers from students. And so another example is, how have you had any challenges this semester? That can be a yes or a no answer, but instead ask, what challenges are you having? Oh, my apologies. I was on mute. I'm so sorry about that. Do I need to start from the beginning? Did y'all hear anything I said?
We got up to the second question. If you'll just get going with that one again.
Oh, I don't even know how that changed. I didn't touch my mic. Okay. So the second question, how have you had have you had any challenges this semester? And so that's an important question to ask, but that is a yes or no question, right? And so asking what challenges are you having, that is really important because they are college students. They are going to have challenges. That is a part of being in college. And then be okay if there is some silence and they have to think about it for a little bit, because sometimes that may be the first time, or maybe their advisor might have asked them, but it might be the first time that they're thinking about, okay, how am I going to explain what some of the challenges are to my parents, right? Another question might be that you might ask is there someone at Elon who can check in with you regularly to make sure you're staying on top of your work? Again, a yes or no question. But again, going back to what Monica said, what resources have you utilized this semester? What help might you need? And based on their response, you can then provide some suggestions of, have you reached out to learning assistants? Have you reached out to Disabilities Resources? Have you met with your advisor? Did you know that you can go to faculty office hours, right? And so we're equipping you with some information so that you can be able to assist your student. And then the last question that you might ask is, have you talked with your professor about submitting work late so that we can get this grade changed? And so this goes back to what Monica said about be a coach, not a proxy, and really helping students think about, how can we make sure that this doesn't happen again, right? So instead of it being, how can we, make sure we get the grade change, focus more on, how can we make sure that this doesn't happen the next time? So reframe that question to say, what help do you need to ensure this doesn't happen again moving forward, right? What took place for you to turn this assignment in late? Do you need to go talk or go meet with the learning strategies tutor so that they can help you plan out your assignments and maybe how to tackle that assignment or how to break it down in smaller pieces? And so these are some suggestions. Of course, there are plenty of other questions, but really think about how you reframe the questions, but also think about how you respond to questions that your student asks. So as Monica had referred to, if your student calls you, definitely help them talk through what's happening, why they're feeling the way they're feeling, or why they have that concern. But I always tell parents and family members when they call our office, I always say, is your student on campus? And if your student is on campus, we are here on campus with them. So send them to our office or have them call our office so that they can get this information directly, because we are actually here with them. And so again, going back to being a coach, not a proxy, referring them to the resources instead of doing it for them is always going to be the best way to help them to be successful. And as a parent of a college student, I know that is very difficult. It takes work, it takes time. And even for me, it takes time for me not to automatically say, well, let me just call your advisor, or let me just call this person, because I know who he should be calling because this is what I do for a living. But at the same time, I want him to learn those skills as well, so that it will also translate to not only when he's not here or not at the university, but when he goes into the world and goes to an internship or goes to, goes and be a part of an organization, he can use those skills. And so we hope that providing this idea of reframing your questions and responses is helpful to you as you try to help your student.
So, I know this is a lot of information. There was a question that popped up earlier that I think is and we're happy to take some more, but it's a connection of James and Monica in your areas. So it was a question really about the start of school for a student, and asking a question about once the materials are submitted to Disabilities Resources, how is information conveyed to the students about the learning strategies tutors and subject-based tutor offerings? So essentially, how does your two specific units work together when there is a student, when Monica, you're reviewing accommodations, it's clear that the student is indicating some things that would work with James and his team. So how would you all help educate each other, and then how would you help the student get connected to those resources as you begin working with them?
So what we would do is in the interactive meeting with the student, we would talk about the services available to them through learning assistance. And the fact that we're all in the same area is very helpful, because oftentimes we will walk the student over to learning assistance and get them on the calendar with Norma or Dr. Holsinger and making an appointment to do a consultation. And vice versa. They will do the same for us too if there's a student in need or a student has self-disclosed. So definitely in the interactive process, when we're having the meeting with the student to talk about their accommodation request, and we see there's needs for them to connect them to other resources, we will help them get connected. If that means walking them across the hall, if that means picking up the phone and calling a contact person and saying, making an introduction to get the student on that person's calendar, we will do those things.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I mean, I think this is, like Monica said, the tremendous benefit of being situated so closely together. So it's very common for a student who might need a learning strategies tutor and additional academic support to also maybe not have put everything in place with Monica's office. So they may have a disability, they may have documentation, but they may have missed like the final step, for instance, of submitting that semester request. So it's common for me to talk with a student about getting help with an LST, but also then saying, like, you're registered with Disabilities Resources, but you don't have your accommodation letters. What's going on there? Let's make sure we get that in place too, so that you can have the best possibility to do well in this course. So you can get the additional support and you can get accommodations that you deserve based on the documentation you've provided.
These have been great questions that popped through. Several of them I answered on the chat, and then several we also turned to our colleagues to address those. James, I would turn it to you for final thoughts and comments then.
Yeah, if there are no additional thoughts, I think the final comment would just be, you can, of course, reach out to us directly with additional thoughts, comments, questions that you may have. I would also encourage you all to go to if you just Google Elon KLC, you'll be able to drill down into each of the offices and the units within the KLC to get a better understanding of what we talked about today. While we talked about a lot, we pretty much just scratched the surface on the different resources that are available to your students. And so our websites are up to date. They have all the information about what we're doing, particularly offices like the Office of Disabilities Resources, where there are processes that need to be followed. It's all very clearly outlined there. And if you do have additional questions after doing that, reach out to us directly, email us or call us, and we're happy to speak with you by phone, by email, set up a Zoom call. We can do any of those things.
Yeah, well, that's great. We really appreciate everybody from the KLC joining us today, giving up their lunch hour for us, and all of you parents at home who participated as well. We really appreciate your participation and your willingness to learn more about Elon and the different resources that are available. So like I said before, this webinar was recorded, and we'll post it on our parent engagement YouTube page, as well as our Elon Parents Facebook page. So if you want to review any of the video, if you want to share it with a spouse or a friend or somebody else, you can definitely do it that way. And we are looking forward. We'll have a couple more webinars in the spring, including with the SPDC, which is our Student Professional Development Center, so about careers and things like that. So be on the lookout for those. So if we don't have anything else, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So thank you all for being here.